How to build a kick-ass SaaS marketing team at every stage of your growth without completely blowing your marketing budget. I want to emphasize because majority of the new SaaS companies blow up their marketing budget early on without ever looking at KPIs for the newfound marketing team. Don't worry if you're not familiar with identifying the top KPIs for your SaaS marketing team, because we're going to be covering all of it later on. Hello guys, welcome to FPG. I'm your host Rahul. Here with Ameet. Ameet, who is a serial entrepreneur, and he is the founder of the holding company First Principles, and he has started and acquired several different SaaS companies and scaled them up to several million in ARR. So Ameet, welcome to the show, and I'm very excited to talk to you.
Yeah, excited to learn from you and share learnings as well.
Awesome. Let's begin. So the topic that we're discussing today is basically how to create a killer SaaS marketing team. So one of the first questions that a lot of founders ask when starting a SaaS company is, what is the first growth hire that I need to make in order for me to create a sustainable growth pattern for my company? So that's question number one. But at the same time, I would like you to break down this question into several different parts. So when you're starting a company, the first growth hire you make is going to be significantly different from when you're a company that's making, let's say, $1 million in ARR. So help us understand how the marketing structure of a SaaS company kind of changes when going from 0 to 1, then 1 to 5, and 5 to 10.
Sure. So the 0 to 1, it's typically one of the co-founders who is doing the marketing. And typically a company that is growing from 0 to 1, you're using pretty much any unscalable channel possible that's kind of getting you customers. And what you end up realizing is typically one channel that's working out really well. And in a lot of cases, we've seen that it's typically word of mouth. It is, you have a good product, people are hearing about it, and people are telling each other about it, and that's sort of how you're growing. So when it comes to your first marketing hire, you typically want to make that once you hit that $1 million ARR mark. And beyond the $1 million mark, it's really when you've hit product market fit. That's when you want to start thinking about hiring someone externally that is not part of the initial founding team. So at that stage, you probably need a generalist who is able to kind of do a lot of the different things. So I would say that would be the first sort of hire that you would do. I'd love to talk a little bit about what this person is going to do or what it would take to get from that 1 million to 3 million mark.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about that for sure.
Sure.
So Ameet, you've founded a lot of different companies as well as acquired many different companies. So if I'm a new founder in the market and creating a SaaS product, the first thing I want to know is how can I essentially hire a marketing team that can lead me towards the path of sustainable growth? And that might have different components to it, because the journey for a company to go from 0 to $1 million is vastly different from the journey that a company would have to undertake to go from $1 to $5 million. So help us understand how the marketing team of a company needs to be structured when going from 0 to 1 compared to a company going from $1 to $5 million.
Sure, sounds good. So, and I would actually break it down further. I think it's 0 to 1, 1 to 3, and then 3 to 5. Mm-hmm. So 0 to 1, honestly, it's probably the founding team or that initial team that's doing the marketing. And typically you're looking at pretty much any channel that can get customers, even if they're unscalable. And the reason I bring that up is because you talked about sustainable growth, and obviously unscalable channels may not be sustainable. So, and that's completely okay. You're looking to find product market fit and you're looking to get your first customers in the door. So 0 to 1, highly recommend that it is one of the founders or the initial founding team that is doing whatever it takes to get the first dollars in, the first customers in. And here, not only are you doing marketing, you're probably doing support, you're probably doing success, you're probably getting product feedback. So you're really looking for a generalist role initially to help build out that initial pipeline of revenue that you're looking at. So that's 0 to 1. Once you get to that $1 million mark, and that's probably a good time where you've hit product market fit, when you really see that, hey, you're able to see $3 million down the horizon. So that's when you start thinking about, all right, how am I going to build this marketing team? And when we look at marketing, there are kind of 3 things. One is digital marketing, second is community and events, and third is product marketing. So those are the 3 components that I really look at. And I'll start off with the first one because that's what's important early on in the journey. Let's say the $1 to $3 million mark. So at this mark, your goal is quite literally to be omnipresent. And the best example of that is HubSpot. let's say it's obviously a CRM for scaling companies, basically mid-market and SMBs. And if you literally Google marketing plan template, job description marketing manager, customer success onboarding plan, who's going to come up first? It's HubSpot, right? So you want to do that same exact thing for whatever your industry is. So let's say my SaaS company is for factory managers to run their factory floor. So whatever things that I'm thinking about in order to be able to do that, when I Google whatever that topic is, I need to come up number one. So we'll talk about how we do that here in a bit, but that's the first thing. So not only do you want to do that is from a organic search perspective, you want to do that, but also from a paid perspective. And paid has two, paid social and PPC. You literally just want to show up everywhere because at this point, there is a small group of people that know you. Now you need to reach out to a larger audience, and you also need to build that brand equity where people can trust you because they're seeing you everywhere.
Understood. So help me understand, at what point you decide that the founders basically have to step outside and hire more specialists to run the marketing org, So obviously $1 million is some kind of a metric to look at,
right?
But I'm sure there are other metrics that you would have looked at for your own companies when you went out into the market and hired specialists, whether it was for an SEO person or maybe for a Google Ads person. So what exactly are those metrics that you look at when it comes to understanding, okay, so we have done whatever we could so far, but now is the time to go ahead and hire some specialists for this particular organization?
Sure, absolutely. So this is a really great question. So founders are really great at being generalists, right? They're able to run product, run support, take a course and figure out Google Ads. You really need a specialist when you know that a channel is proven out, or you want to prove out a channel and you need a person that can kind of execute against that. So let's say paid ads is a channel that you want to go ahead and test out, or it is already a channel that is working and you want to go ahead and scale that. That's when our recommendation would be to either hire a person full-time, or you go ahead and hire an agency that's done that before. And quite honestly, but when you journey of $1 to $5 million, the recommendation is probably to work with an agency rather than hiring someone internally, mainly because to run paid ads, there are several different functions. And we're talking about paid ads, they're different. Yeah. We'll talk about different channels as well, right? You need someone that's a great copywriter. You need someone that knows bidding strategy. You need someone that knows to figure out exactly the keywords to bid on. And the gamut of things that you kind of need is less of a specialist and more of a generalist. Mm-hmm. So at this point, you want to work with some of the best agencies that are out there, and then kind of go on from there. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. And also help us understand, obviously you've started this company called Sponsor Cloud, which is scaled to several $1 million in ARR. So was it a similar kind of journey that you guys undertook when it comes to, $0 to $1 million? We are obviously going to focus with all the resources that we have internally. The founders are focusing on customer support, on marketing, on sales. At what point did you hire your first account executive, for example? At what point did you hire your first content writers, and so on?
Sure. So our initial journey was literally the founders reaching out to people within their own network and getting customers. So that was the first goal. So account executive, we hired probably pretty early on, probably 200, 300K in ARR, maybe even earlier. Mm-hmm. However, I think that account executive is a sales role. And I think you should hire salespeople pretty early on because they are direct. They get you revenue immediately, right? And it's very easy to prove if a salesperson is driving revenue or not, and hiring a full cycle AE. So marketers, though, we hired our first kind of full-time marketer. Kind of with the timeline that I kind of presented to you after $1 million in ARR, where we started hiring full-time people in the marketing side of things. And learned a ton through that in terms of whom to hire, how to hire, and what their background should be.
Great. And so you spoke a little bit about how specialization becomes quite paramount when it comes to scaling past $2 to $3 million and so on. But do you think that even past a certain point, let's say your company has scaled past $2, $3 million, even past that point, do you see that there is a role for a generalist kind of person as well? Or do you think it's always going to be a specialist past a $3 million in ARR mark?
Yeah, no, 100%. So I would say specialists are great at going ahead and scaling proven channels. So let's say you know that SEO works for you, or paid ads works for you, or community works for you, or social works for you. Find a specialist who is quite literally the best at it in the world to go ahead and continue building that out. And where you need a generalist is where you're looking at new channels. So let's say you're testing out running your own events or doing speaking engagements and kind of getting leads through there. So you're starting to do account-based marketing. That's where you sort of need a generalist who is able to be at that frontier, trying different things out to see what is working and what is not working.
Understood. I think that's great because I've seen you, undertake the journey of syndication pro with Sponsor Cloud specifically. I've seen all the experiments that have gone through, and it's been a crazy journey. So from a marketing team perspective, a lot of people might be wondering, especially SaaS founders, what are the key KPIs that they need to be looking at when it comes to measuring the success of their marketing team? So can you just shed some light on that?
Absolutely. I mean, the top metric when it comes to any marketing team is, of course, MQLs. How many MQLs are you generating? And the second one would be, how much pipeline is that generating when it comes to sales? I can generate, 300 MQLs, but let's say they're not with a target audience, or they aren't they aren't qualified on the sales side. So that's the other metric, is MQLs and then conversion to SQOs, which is sales qualified opportunities. So if I was a person just looking at two metrics, it'd be MQLs and SQOs and the percentage of conversion. So those are the two lagging measures. I think that's what they're called, right? Yeah. Or leading, whichever.
Yeah. Wait, did you make the point earlier in the podcast that $0 to $1 million, it's always going to be the founding team that handles marketing? But at the same time, you can hire people.
0 to 1, it used to be the founding team. 1 to 3 is you start hiring people.
Yeah, but the founding team cannot do SEO and shit like that, right? They have to hire.
They can. So you hire people when you have a channel that you see that is scaling. But
you cannot see SEO scaling until you invest at least 6 months worth of effort. So
either you hire a specialist specifically to test out a marketing channel, or you hire someone to basically scale it. So you basically say that, hey, I want to test out SEO, and I'm going to spend 6 months and this budget, and this is a very specific scope to test it out, or the other one.
Okay, so the next question I wanted to ask you was, and this is very critical because founders definitely want to know this. So what are the most critical roles within a marketing function? So obviously we know content writer is somebody that you need to hire. We know that you need to probably hire an SEO person. So can you help us understand what the distribution of that marketing team looks like?
Sure. So I'll again go back to that framework of 1 to 3 and then 3 to 5. Mm-hmm. So in that first 1 to 3 role, you really need to build out a digital marketing team, and that can be placed under head of digital marketing. Forget roles, but basically someone that leads the digital marketing team. And in there, the content writer is that first role that you need to be able to hire. Then is a SEO analyst, and I'll talk about why that's needed. Then you need someone that can do PPC and also paid social. You need someone that can do social media. You need a web developer. You need a designer and a CRO specialist. So these are the different roles: content writer, SEO, PPC, paid social, social media, web developer, design, and then a CRO specialist. And obviously you don't need full-time people in all of these roles. You can work with contractors, and that would be the recommendation, at least early on. So the genesis of all of this, or kind of the base of this, is deep research, and the research is doing keyword research. So you go ahead and understand what your keywords are that you want to kind of show up on rankings when people are Googling things, or on the paid ad side, or on the paid social side. So it starts with keyword research, then that comes into a content plan. And a content plan is everything from blogs to videos to any sort of content that you do. So that's the next piece of it. And then it kind of goes into the different channels that are there. So I talked about the responsibilities from a hiring perspective. These are all the roles that you need to hire for. And again, they don't need to be full-time people. However, you definitely want to find a person at the top who understands all these things extremely deeply, because it's really important that you're able to hold whomever you're hiring accountable. So if someone is presenting to you a PPC strategy, sure, you can look at the ROAS, saying that, hey, what's the return on ad spend? And you can look at metrics and things like that, but how do you optimize it? Is it making sense? Should we try out LinkedIn versus Twitter or Facebook or Google? you need someone that has a really good understanding of that. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, that does, And a lot of the problem that a lot of teams run into is cross-functional communication. So help us understand how in your organization, so how does your marketing team interact with the sales team, with the support team, with the product team, and so on? Because obviously, if there's a product feature launch, the marketing team has to know about it because an update has to go out to the customers, right? So help us understand how that communication looks like in your company.
So do you want to talk about it when we were at that 1 to 3 million mark?
Let's break it down, from 0 to 1, 1 to 3, and 3 to 5.
Sure. So 0 to 1, I mean, it's a Slack message. It's like, bro, we got to send this message out. Are you going to email or am I going to send the email? So it's super simple. It's not many people, right? So it's as simple as that. 1 to 3, you're adding more people. With that said, I don't think there was a established process, quite honestly. It's more like this needs to get done, and then you kind of send it out. And then beyond that 3, you really need to start establishing processes because you're having more people onto the team. When it comes to communication, we have implemented something called EOS, which is Entrepreneurial Operating System, where everything kind of just operates through different sets of meetings. And then we also have created clear SOPs around, hey, when a product launch happens, what are the things that happen? So everything from when a product launch happens, you need to write KB articles, you need to train your internal team on it, and then you need to send out external communication. The customer success team needs to be able to reach out to customers who may be using certain features. That might be a really great time to upsell and cross-sell as well. So so you need a very clear SOP as well, and then you need someone that is able to ensure that each of those SOPs are followed cross-functionally.
All right, so Ameet, you talked a lot about KPIs, and obviously most of it kind of translates into marketing qualified leads and perhaps them transitioning into sales qualified leads. But there will be a lot of roles within your marketing team that are not directly tied to MQLs. So it could be a content writer, perhaps, it could be a marketing coordinator. So their roles they somehow help towards the goal of acquiring more MQLs, but not necessarily completely tied to it. So what are the baseline KPIs that you have in place to judge or evaluate the performance of a content writer, for example, or a marketing coordinator, for example? So what are the baseline metrics that you track in your companies?
Sure, sounds good. So I'll review the roles again, and then based on that, we'll just go through the KPIs really fast. So you have first the head of digital marketing. Their only KPI is MQLs, right? I mean, of course, there are other metrics which we'll talk through, but if you ask me, one metric is MQLs that they generate. Then let's talk about the SEO analyst. It should be the amount of traffic that is coming onto the site. That should be the KPI that they should be tracked with. And the second is, it's also important that you're getting bottom of the funnel traffic. So what are the keywords that they're actually ranking number 1 for? So people talk a lot about being on the first page. It is really important to be on the first page in the top 3, but what's most important is being the number 1 search term. So along with traffic, but also what are the keywords that they're coming from, and pick 3 to 5 keywords that's like, we got to rank number 1 for this keyword. So for the SEO analyst, that's that. Then for the content writer, this is a role where their job is to just produce content. So it is the amount of content that they can produce. And now because of AI, quite honestly, the amount of content that a person can produce is a lot more than it was even a year ago. So of course, you're using the help of AI to write kind of the base content, and then you're going ahead and editing the content to make it better. So for a content writer, it is number of the production of either blog articles, it could be infographics, whatever they're producing. That's 2. For the PPC analyst, it's the return on ad spend. So that is what the KPI should be. And then also maybe the number of leads that they're generating. And this is a very important topic, and maybe we can talk about it at a different time. A lot of PPC guys, you'll be able to get immediate results, but when you go deeper, you really need to know if it is branded or non-branded search terms. So for a PPC analyst, it should be branded return on ad spend and non-branded return on ad spend. So those are 2 critical metrics, and it's very important for you to know that. So that's that.
And for people who don't understand that distinction, can you break down what a branded keyword and a non-branded keyword kind of means?
Sure. So let's say my company is called SaaS101.com. So if I rank for SaaS 101 and I'm coming up number one on the paid ranking, obviously a person already knows who I am. And instead of clicking on the second result, which is my company name, they're clicking on the first one, and then, hey, they landed on the website. That's one. And then second is where let's say I'm selling loan management software, and I Google loan management software, and then that's where I'm getting people from. They don't know me. I'm getting traffic from where it says loan management software. So that is non-branded. So yeah, that's PPC. Social media, it's all about, the number of people, but it's all about engagement. So how much engagement are you actually getting from social? And then also maybe the MQLs that you're generating from social. So for the social media person. Then we have other roles, web developer, design. Here is just, how fast are they able to deliver on designs or on web pages. So it's more of a metric on speed. And then you have a CRO, a conversion rate optimization specialist. So there it is, hey, our conversion was X and now it's Y, and it's that person.
Understood. I want to talk a little bit about, because you brought up web development. So one of the big topics is, obviously pricing is a big factor when it comes to SaaS marketing, right? So how do you position your company against your competitors when it comes to pricing? So what kind of thinking goes into place when it comes to actually pricing your product? So is it like a marketing initiative? Is it like a management issue? So how exactly do you come up with the pricing strategy for your products?
Sure. So pricing is a very interesting topic, and I think this should remain, at least initially, even up till 10 million in ARR, with kind of the founding team, because it is so integrated across a lot of departments. And the first thing is, hey, what is your ICP? So understand what your ICP is, and then figure out the value that you're driving for them, and based on that, figure out pricing.
Cool. Yeah. So Ameet, you've talked a lot about, as the organization kind of scales, the need for specialists far outgrows the need for generalists, right?
Yeah.
But with that being said, when the company kind of began, you must have had like one or two growth members who probably were generalists and were useful in a variety of different activities. So once the company kind of starts to grow and the need for specialists kind of becomes more important or paramount. So how exactly do you see the roles of those kind of generalists changing within the landscape of the fact that the company is evolving and is in need of more specialist people? So do you have particular examples that you can cite from your own journey of scaling multiple companies where you've had multiple generalist people who worked really hard and helped your company in scaling past the $1 to $2 million barrier, but at some point the role kind of had to change?
Yeah, absolutely, Rahul. That's a really great question. And this is something that you can use an opportunity or fumble and ruin your company's culture. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to generalists, they have two options. One is they can learn a specialization and then they can focus in and go all in on whatever that specialization is. And for me, there's will and there's skill. If a person has high will, then their ability to do something is always they're going to be able to do it. So you present the person with the opportunity and the time either to be a specialist and continue doing that, or the second option is your company needs to continue growing. And there's always going to be areas where you need a generalist, where you need the person at the frontier to be able to figure stuff out. And that's where you ask this person to be on that frontier. It could be on the marketing side. It could potentially be on the product side. It could be like, hey, we need to build out a customer success function and go ahead and go there. And true generalists love that opportunity where they're able to go into different things and try out different things. And if the opportunities aren't present here, the third option is where they move on. So those are the three options. Find a specialty that they can do and that they can love, and they can be literally within the top 1% of that specialty, and make sure you give them the time and enough resources where they're able to do that. Two is give them generalist roles. Maybe it's in marketing, maybe it's in other functions of the business. And third is find a different opportunity or work with them to find a different opportunity.
So Ameet, you've talked a lot about the team structure, specifically from $1 to $3 million, but people especially founders would also want to know what exactly the journey looks like from $3 to $5 million. So what does the team structure need to look like? What are the KPIs that you need to track? Obviously, MQLs, SQLs are always going to be important. But beyond that, are there additional roles that you need to hire for which you perhaps need additional KPIs? So what does the team structure kind of look like for the $3 to $5 million mark?
Absolutely. So 100%. So if you want to continue your growth rate that you probably are on, most SaaS companies that go from, let's say, 1 to 3, maybe growing anywhere between 50 to 200% a year. So, which is awesome, right? That's the reason SaaS companies are so exciting. For you to be able to continue that growth rate at that percentage, you really need to go up market. And you may have started off at the SMB space. That's sort of where most SaaS companies start off. Now you need to go after mid-market and enterprise, and the sale process is completely different. So this is where you really need to start focusing on community and events. And that's where it's so with the digital marketing, that engine and that machine should continue moving forward, and they should continue having their targets. You need to literally prop up another channel, which is purely on community and events. And you can build out your own community and have your own events, or you can be attending other events and be part of other people's community. So for this role, the biggest thing is that you need to be a subject matter expert. If I'm going to go ahead and talk at some event about something, I got to be an expert in that. Or if I'm going to be running a community, I got to have the connections to bring the right people in to provide advice or to whatever I need to. So here you need subject matter expertise. And here the KPI, because again, that's probably the most important thing, is it's actually MQA, which is marketing qualified accounts. So with digital marketing, we talk about marketing qualified leads. Here we're talking about marketing qualified accounts. So what's the difference between marketing qualified leads versus marketing qualified accounts? With marketing qualified accounts, you're looking at account-based marketing. You're not going after a lead, you're going after an account. Because to attack the mid-market and win the enterprise, you will have multiple stakeholders and multiple people that will be part of the decision-making process. And that is what the goal of this community and events team is going to be. They're going to be partnering with anybody on the sales development or the sales side, and they may be reporting to the same person or different, but they really need to work with that person to be able to get marketing qualified accounts.
And how do you measure the success, so of a community manager? So for example, if you are running a SaaS company, you can obviously come to some kind of a baseline metric about what the MQL numbers need to be for a particular month. But for community management, so what is the total number of MQAs that you're looking at for a particular month? So do you have a baseline metric?
Sure. I mean, I think it really depends company to company. First, you're testing it out. So you're testing out the waters to understand what it is. Over time, to provide a very specific answer, quite honestly, you're going after mid-market and enterprise. So the amount of pipeline that this generates should be literally 2x of what your digital marketing team generates. And that's over time. With that said, because these are larger accounts, and it should be 2x of what your digital marketing team generates. The sales cycle is probably going to be longer. However, the retention is much better, and you need to have a customer success function that can also support these accounts. That's another topic for another podcast, but definitely if you're looking for a metric, this team is the next stage of growth. It's 2x of what your digital marketing team generates.
Understood. So Ameet, with the community manager, the digital marketing function, and so many different things going on at the same time, it might become almost impossible to track exactly what is going on in the organization. So there are so many different people working on so many different tasks. So this kind of ties into the revenue operations angle of it.
Yeah.
So I would love to know more about how exactly you guys are managing so many different marketing initiatives into a single source of truth. So how does that process look like for you guys?
Absolutely. It's a constant work in progress. And I would want to say building a single source of truth is something that probably should start off in an Excel sheet or a Google sheet. And it should continue expanding into a CRM. You can use HubSpot, you can use Salesforce, and there are obviously a million other CRMs that are out there. So it's a very progressive effort and a very concentrated focus on leadership to make sure that happens. Revenue operations is like going to the gym. You only realize how important it is when, your doctor tells you that, hey, you got to go to the gym. But if you have been going to the gym, it's going to save you a lot of energy to be able to kind of focus on it. So to answer your question, revenue operations is extremely critical. You need an extremely analytical person to understand what are the most important things and how you're going to tie them together. And someone that's been there and done that before actually is also very, very important because, your tech stack that you use is very critical. And we ourselves, might have used 15 different tools before we finalized one. But if someone told me like, hey, dude, these are the tools you got to use, they tie in well together, tie them in together, and then move on. And from a productivity perspective of the people that you're working with, it is mind-blowing how awesome it is for them to have all their data. So for the marketing team, when I say revenue operations, is purely from like who our customers are. And a lot of companies, they don't know who their customers are. They don't know if the customer is churned. They don't know if when was the last marketing communication or support communication or success communication that went out. So tying all this in is extremely critical. And quite honestly, I think it should start even before the $1 million mark, where you finalize what your tech stack is and start building it out. If you're funded, go ahead and start that at that 500K mark. And then if you're bootstrapped, you should have the budgets to do this once you hit that million and a half mark.
Yeah, I think that was going to be my next question as to when you should actually hire a person for revenue operations, but you kind of partially answered it by saying even before you cross the $1 million mark, you should perhaps have somebody in place. But a follow-up question to that would be, should you have a full-time revenue operations manager before you hit the $1 million mark, or should you have an internal person kind of handle it based on the skill sets that you mentioned, whether the person is analytical or not? So how would you approach that particular problem?
Sure. So my recommendation would be, again, work with specialists. And quite honestly, if revenue operations does its job correctly, you don't need this person after the implementation. So it's where they've built the engine. You obviously don't need the person that built your car engine to be there while you're driving the car, right? In that same sense, once that engine is built, it should work. And there'll be consistent changes and improvements that continue to happen. However, I don't see this as a full-time role until quite some time, quite honestly. Mm-hmm. So work with a specialist agency that can come in, and also work with an agency that is able to truly spend time understanding what the current processes are and how things work, and can be truly consultative and are not rushing through things. There are a lot of RevOps agencies that'll just go ahead and tell me what you want me to do and I'll implement it. But you really need to work with someone that understands how things are working and can take a pause and can also push back and also be a partner to you, saying that, hey, this is the tool that you have, but it's not scalable, and these are 15 reasons why you should move on to this tool. And someone that can help with that migration.
Understood. So the final topic that I wanted to talk about with you today was about product marketing. And so initially, a lot of people, especially founders, struggle to identify their ideal customer profile. So help us understand what that process looks like for you when it comes to identifying the people that you're trying to sell your product to, and how would you go about creating the ICP for your company?
Absolutely. So I think this is a two-pronged approach. One is look at your existing customers and what your customer base is, and then build a product around that. And when I say existing customers, look at the customers that are the happiest with you and also are providing you the most revenue and obviously the lowest churn. So from within your customer base, go ahead and identify who that is. My personal kind of focus is always in the mid-market. SMB, the churn is always high. Enterprise, the sales cycles are too long. Focus on the mid-market, and quite honestly, they're the least serviced. So the enterprise companies don't want to work with the mid-market, and the SMB solutions are never good enough for the mid-market.
Correct.
And because of that, you want to focus on the mid-market. So kind of to answer your question specifically, this falls under something called product marketing, and that's sort of what this role is. And again, as we've talked a lot about generalists versus specialists, this is a role that typically, frankly, salespeople are the best product marketing guys because they're being hit up from people every day of like, hey, I'm seeing this in the market, et cetera, et cetera. So But anyway, so product marketing in itself is a very critical role of the marketing team, and their job is to figure out the ICP, create battle cards. There should be battle cards for every competitor that you have. What are the features that we have? What are the features that they don't have? What is the value that they're selling? What is the value that they're not selling? So features is one, but really talk about value. And this might be doing secret shopping or whatever it might be with your customers, with your competitors. It might be talking to your existing customers. We literally have our customers send us screenshots of when they're being hit up by our competitors. Like, bro, this is what they're sending, just letting you know. So thankful for those customers, obviously, but that's the second piece of it. And these guys, based on all this, also develop the messaging. Hey, this is how we're gonna sell value. This is how we're gonna position ourselves. This is our vision. This is sort of what our voice is, or our brand voice is. So product marketing is an extremely important piece of the business, and it organically starts out with the founders and that initial founding team, and then it continues to grow into a much larger role. And I would say this is a role that can be done part-time by, I shouldn't say part-time. This should be the role of the CMO or whoever is heading the growth side of the business. And then over time, maybe past 5 million in ARR is when you actually hire a full-time person, because not only is this role about understanding what's happening in the market, but also making sure every person on the growth side and maybe even on the product side is understanding of what this is understanding what's happening in the market and what our communication and messaging is. So that's product marketing.
Awesome. The last question would be, storytelling happens to be a big part of product marketing.
Yeah.
So help us understand who is responsible for the storytelling piece of it. Is it the product marketeer or the chief marketing officer, or is it the founder, or is it the copywriter? Who exactly is responsible for creating copies that actually tell a story about what problems your products solve?
Sure. So, I mean, I think whoever is the best at it is probably the right person, and maybe it is the person that is leading the growth team. With stories, though, I think the most important part is being genuine and being honest. So if you are kind of telling a true story, yeah, and most founding stories or how the product came about for companies that have succeeded are truly interesting, right? Because it's typically someone that had a problem, you went through different things to find a solution, and then you're kind of going from it. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think ultimately it should be one of the founders that's responsible for it, because they themselves have felt it, right? Yeah. It's them that felt it, and that's sort of where it should go out from. So yeah.
Great. Ameet, thanks a lot for being on the podcast. It was amazing to host you, and thanks a lot for sharing your valuable insights. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Rahul.
Yeah. So, all right, guys, thanks a lot for watching the video. If you want to know how to create a stellar marketing team, please consider downloading your free checklist. It's divided into 3 different parts. How to create a stellar marketing team going from 0 to 1, 1 to 3, and then 3 to 5. And link is available in the description. And if you also want to watch your previous videos about how to double your SaaS traffic in 3 months or less, please consider watching that video as well. We have linked that particular video in the description as well. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Thank you.